I'd like to have a little fireside chat, except there's no fire and it's raining. That's the kind of tone I'd like to take anyway. We'll see if it works. See if I can pull it off. A couple of more notes from the discussion on secular morality, objective versus subjective, and all that good talk. I want to start with a couple of comments I've received where people have said, okay, euthanasia, moral or immoral. I want to teach my child, or I don't know, 8-week pregnancy to abort, moral or immoral. That's kind of an unfair tactic, I think, to use that, right? I'm not claiming to have all knowledge here. Contribute. Don't put me in a corner, right? I don't think that's fair. I'm not claiming to have all knowledge here. And really, when it comes to the discussion of morality, that's the graduate school stuff. We're in kindergarten right now, as far as I'm concerned, at least with this level of the discussion. We're talking about, is there even such a thing as objective morality? And you're using sort of I think kind of an unfair debate tactic to say, okay, Mr. Smart Guy, what about this? So, let's don't do that. I'm a little surprised, I have to say, by the direction that some of the comments and the discussion back and forth between myself and some of the commenters is going. It's really eye-opening for me. And that's a great thing, right? It's very interesting. Because all along I've sort of been, and maybe I've been wrongly assuming that everybody knows what I mean, obviously, when I say subjective morality and hypocrisy, and by what standard do you appeal to other people to accept your version of morality? Because all along I've had the assumption that it's a universal principle, right? That if we assume that morality is subjective, that we assume that it's obviously subjective for all people. All people have their own sets of values. And if there's no objective right or wrong, then the only way that we can sort of successfully promote our own set of values is for some other people to not get to do that. And so it's a principle that needs to be universalized, that can't be universalized. Not everyone can have their values accepted. And so that then gets us to, okay, how do we, as someone said somewhere, how do we come to consensus? The only thing we can do is come to a consensus. That is a misleading word to use because there is no consensus. We don't ever come to a consensus unless we could define a standard, an objective standard, something outside of ourselves, which is why I'm promoting the need to discuss this. I don't know. Let's clear that up. I don't know, right? I am just a mechanic. So, I have some strong opinions and some things that I've reasoned myself and some arguments that I've heard that make sense to me. But I don't know. I think it would be a really good thing, however, because all we have otherwise are a bunch of factions. And what concerns me the most about that is then we come to appealing to might makes right. And this has happened in the comments section of my videos. I've asked the question, how do you then appeal to other people or enforce your morality on other people then? If you can't appeal to an objective standard, how is it that you make your set of values override someone else's? And it's actually been said, the people who can do that are the people with the most power to do that. And I thought the rational people were beyond might makes right arguments. I thought we were using reason and logic and rationality. Someone else rightly said, look around the world. That is how it works. Might makes right. Yeah, you're right. It is. And I think that's immoral. And I think we all feel like that's immoral. if someone came to your house tomorrow and said, this is a home invasion and I'm more powerful than you, I'm going to do as I please, aside from the terror of the moment, I think you'd think that's immoral. And I think the majority of people in your country and around the world would agree that that's immoral. So how is it you extend that principle to the population? Then it's not immoral. And the same with the tyranny of the majority. Tyranny of the majority, and to some degree a democratic republic, because it's still it's a tyranny of a minority stacked on top of a tyranny of the majority, is just the force of it's a school of fish, right? It's just strength in numbers instead of just brute force. But I thought we were the camp that would say if some guy came along with a club, to club us over the head, hold, excuse me, before you do that, I'd like to appeal to rationality and reason and give you some reasons why you should not club me over the head. Instead of sort of subjecting ourselves to the will of the force. And I don't think we would accept that on a small scale, but we will on a large scale. I still feel like that's doublethink. I'm appealing to, when I talk about objective morality, I'm appealing to some sort of first principles. And there's some things that we can recognize, and I'll be honest, I have not researched the Sam Harris. Several people have said that Sam Harris has made talks about there being a potential for an objective morality to exist that could be uncovered, using the scientific method, something to that effect. I have not researched that. I will have to do that, obviously. But a set of first principles and a recognition of some universal truths, some objective truths. And I don't know if these would form the basis for some sort of properly basic beliefs or not. I'm not, I'm only so well equipped in those departments. I'm no Aussie. But some sort of a recognition that, that there are people and there are actions and there are effects of actions and, a recognition that certain principles to be useful to us at all need to be universalized, right? So, for instance, morality needs to be universalized in order for it to make any sense. Otherwise, it's just sort of a set of rules for some, and other people are not subject to those rules. And if we, however it comes, maybe there's an evolutionary component to it. I don't know. I don't know, right? That's the whole point here. But a recognition that there are some objective truths and there are some concepts that to be meaningful at all need to be universalized. And then, a rational and reasoned approach from that point forward to come to, what I would imagine hopefully one day would be the uncovering of some objective ethics. And I think they would be very, very few. So few, in fact, that it would be easy to replace all systems of law with those golden rule type stuff, right? Somebody also said, objective morality can't exist because if it did, we wouldn't even be discussing subjective morality. It'd just be known. That is to ignore crawling before you walk, I think. And if you look at, one other thing I would say that a lot of the theists are right to point out sometimes is to say, look at how, corrupt the world is still. There's wars, there's all kinds of, crime and different things. I mean, we're clearly still crawling. I don't think we're sprinting yet as a species. But in some ways it does, right? Because people talk about the golden rule. That's a value judgment, the golden rule. And it's a value judgment with an inherent, I think, insinuation that it is objective. The golden rule. It's not my particular golden subjective value, belief, right? It's the golden rule. And there are lots of those. There are lots that we sort of agree upon in principle, at least, most of us in the West, right? Not that many people I could think you would find in the West that would agree that, rape is a moral thing to do, right? And by the way, that can't be universalized. And I think that's a key element. That's a little hint. You can, if you like, you can go read Molyneux's book. As many holes as there are, I think, in his theory, he's got some valid basis there for it. That many things that we would consider, and we're talking again about the moral heavyweight issues, many of the things that we think sort of seemingly innately, at least in the West, are immoral, they all have something in common, and that's that they can't be universalized, right? Two people can't universalize that rape is moral and have that work. Pragmatically, it just doesn't work, right? Because they'd have to, in order to be moral, they'd have to both be constantly raping. One, the act of rape means you have to resist it. It's not, so you're simultaneously resisting and accepting that rape is, right? Same with murder and theft and things like that. So I think the universalization of the principle is a key element to it. But we have to first, I think, accept that universalization is a meaningful principle and that it applies. And I don't know how you get there, right? Like I'm not saying I know. I've been discussing a little bit in the comments section, and people will say, you are acting as though slavery is objectively wrong, and that's not the case and everyone can see it, which I don't even know what that means. So you're universalizing the principle that everybody can see that I'm wrong, but you won't accept the universalization of a principle of morality. It's kind of strange. But then I'd ask the question, well, could slavery ever come back? And the person said, yeah, it could happen, and I would resist it with everything within me. We could regress morally. To me, that sounds like a value judgment with the insinuation that it's a universalized principle. We could regress morally. Not we could regress morally, in my opinion. The tyranny of the majority may... that's a value judgment in a world where you're saying there are no objective right or wrong. So where's the regression? Where's the forward and back? Where's the we leapt forward and then we fell back? We regressed. You didn't say we regressed in my opinion. We might regress morally in my opinion, in my value judgment. But if the value judgment of the tyranny of the majority or the people with the most force was different, then, At the very least, can you not see why an objective set of secular values might be something that would be worth pursuing? Assuming that it doesn't conflict with your own personal subjective preferences, right? And someone else said that, I think regardless of objective morality existing, subjective morality exists. And I guess that's true, although I think that's where philosophy and reason come in, because I think if you were a rational human being, your desire would be to be on the side of virtue, right? And if you don't desire to be on the side of virtue, that probably speaks to some sort of a dysfunction. And, whatever origin that might have. But I would think we would all want to be virtuous, and I would think over time, certainly our individual subjective morality would align with objective. Someone else said that the two don't equate, because I had said, you can't, it's not right. You have no right to enforce on someone who they should subjectively love or what they should subjectively like. And you said, that doesn't equate. First, I will say that wasn't mine. If it doesn't equate, I thank you for your help in refuting the person who actually made that equivocation in the first place. But But I think when it comes to subjective values, I think in some ways they do equate. And the reason this person was saying they don't equate is he was saying you can't choose who to love and you can't choose what to like. You know, somebody says, hey, that music's crap or whatever. I actually disagree. I think that your preferences can morph and grow. And I know my own have. And sometimes it's deliberate. Sometimes it's someone has made a suggestion somehow that, you know, okay, it wasn't Justin Bieber, but, you know. And I thought, well, I should check out this other artist more or whatever. And, you know, by the time I'm sort of finished the process, the original artist that I kind of was digging before is like, yeah, that's not, you know, not digging that. Or through philosophy, right? You may think you're in love with someone, and through seeking self-knowledge and process of, you know, dissecting virtue and different things, you might actually come to a point where you go, wow, that person actually is not as appealing to me anymore, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree. You can't sort of outwardly, I can't just say, okay, you know, blue is my favorite color. I can't just decide today that it's not my favorite color, but it's not quite as cut and dried as that. So I'm not sure about how well that equates with morality, but I think if you are going to make the value judgment that there is no value judgment, in other words, if you're going to say there is no objective right or wrong, that all morality is subjective, I don't think you have any more right to impose your subjective morality on another than you have to impose who they should love or what they should like. If there's no value judgment being made there, no objective value judgment, you don't have a basis for it. And the thing I should say too about being hypocritical, I probably said it in my last video, but what I should have added to the statement, because a lot of people are countering and saying it's not hypocritical to believe one thing and act another. It is if you wish to be consistent, right? You can't do those things simultaneously and be consistent, which I guess is really the definition of hypocrisy, right? Is inconsistency. State one goal, act another way. It's inconsistent, it's hypocritical. What concerns me the most after seeing all this stuff in the atheist-theist debate, and I think the vast majority of people commenting on these videos are atheists, is the sudden acceptance of might makes right. After all the discussions with theists about might makes right. You know, the rejection of it, right? And suddenly it seems like we're accepting it, we're appealing to it. And yet when you teach your children, for instance, things about morality, you don't make that appeal. You would teach them might does not make right. You don't take that truck from Tommy. But Dad, I'm bigger than him. I can get away with it. We're supposed to be the rational ones. Let's use reason. Let's not appeal to might makes right, whether it be by brute force, barbarism, or the tyranny of the majority. I mean, I understand that's the way things function today. What I'm saying is it's immoral. Thanks for watching.